Cognitive bias is a systematic error in thinking, affecting how we process information, perceive others, and make decisions. It can often lead to irrational thoughts or judgments, and is often based on our perception, memories, or individual and societal beliefs. There are roughly about 150 identified cognitive biases, but here are the top 10 that most people fall for and should make a conscious daily effort to avoid. 1. Fundamental attribution error. Fundamental attribution error is oversizing personal traits and underestimating situational factors when judging others' behavior. Consider this scenario. You're running late for work and cut someone off in traffic, earning yourself an angry honk. Your immediate reaction is likely embarrassment coupled with self-justification. Hey, I'm late for work, so I had to drive aggressively. You acknowledge your behavior was wrong, but attribute it to circumstances beyond your control. Now flip the situation. When someone cuts you off in traffic, you are unlikely to extend the same situational consideration. Instead of thinking, they must be late for work, your mind might jump immediately to character judgments. What an idiot! They must just be a reckless person. You can overcome the fundamental attribution error by making a conscious effort and extend the same situational consideration to others. When someone cuts you off, instead of thinking, what an idiot, try reframing. They must be late for something important, or maybe they're dealing with an emergency. This shift in perspective doesn't really excuse poor behavior, but it does help us respond with empathy rather than judgment, leading to less stress and more compassionate interactions with others in the daily basis. 2. Sunk cost fallacy. Sunk cost fallacy occurs when we continue to invest time, money, and effort into something simply because we have already invested so much, even when it's clearly not working out. Have you ever finished a meal or drink not because you enjoyed it or need it, but because you have already paid for it? That is an example of a sunk cost fallacy. We make decisions based on our previous investment rather than what we want to achieve in the future. We fall into this trap constantly, stay in bad relationship because we have invested in years, or continue failed project because we have spent months on that because we are almost done. You can break free of this fallacy by asking yourself this question. If I were starting fresh right now, would I choose this path? Be honest. Dare to ignore what you have already invested and focus solely on future costs versus future benefits. Your past investment is gone either way. Don't let it trap you into making poor future choices. 3. The hot hand fallacy. Hot hand fallacy occurs when we believe that a streak of successes makes future successes more likely, even in situations where each event is clearly independent and random. Have you ever watched a basketball player make several shots in a row and thought they were on fire and should keep getting the ball? That's the hot hand fallacy in action. We convince ourselves that the past wins predict future wins, even when luck clearly plays a significant role. We see patterns where none exist, betting more after winning streak at the casino, assuming successful trader will keep outperforming, or believing that because we already have 3 successful job interviews, the 4th is guaranteed to go well as well. You can break free of this fallacy by asking yourself, are these events truly connected, or am I seeing patterns in randomness? Be honest. Recognize that in many situations, each outcome is independent of the last. A coin doesn't really remember its previous flips, and random events doesn't own you continued success just because you have been lucky recently. Base your decision on actual probabilities rather than imaginary streaks. 4. Groupthink. Groupthink occurs when a group prioritizes harmony and consensus over critical thinking, leading to poor decision-making because dissenting voices are either self-censored or silenced. Before they start a program, MBAs typically have about 10 to 20 post-MBA career aspirations. In 2 years, by the time that they finish the program, there are only 3: consulting, finance, or leadership rotational program. Turns out you are unconsciously swayed by how others think, even when you are aware of the fallacy. Have you ever been in a meeting where everyone seemed to agree on a clearly flawed idea, but no one spoke up? That's groupthink in action. We suppress our doubts and concerns to maintain group cohesion because it is painful to voice dissent. That's how bad ideas go unchallenged, from bad corporate strategies to failed military operations, because questioning the group is a lot more painful and uncomfortable than going along with a poor decision. You can break free from groupthink by actively encouraging dissent and asking yourself, what am I not saying because I think it might be unpopular? Dare to be the 10th man, the man responsible for voicing concerns and acting differently, even when they contradict the group's decision. Remember that temporary discomfort from this disagreement is far better than the lasting consequences of a bad decision made in forced harmony. 5. Confirmation bias. Confirmation bias is the tendency to search for, interpret it, and remember information that confirms your preconceptions. In other words, looking for information and pattern where it does not exist. For example, we tend to believe in our daily horoscope. For fun, here's my daily horoscope. Recent spiritual breakthrough might have you feeling both exhilarated and downcast. Your sensitive side tells you that this is the definite step forward on your spiritual path, but the logical side might cause you to doubt its reality. Take comfort in the fact that reality is relative and that what you're sensing is at least valid for you. Then keep moving forward. Okay, I have no idea what it means, but my brain was trying to find an active pattern to come out with a suitable explanation based on my experience. In fact, horoscopes are written in highly interpretive ways, and therefore allow the readers to find an interpretation that confirms their perceptions. You can overcome the confirmation bias by actively seeking opposing views, questioning your assumptions, and being willing to change your mind. Like Ray Dalio, build your trusted circle, 6 to 8 people who hold diverse views, who you can turn to and give you your unvarnished truth, especially in difficult situations. 6. Availability bias. Availability bias is the tendency to judge the likelihood of an event based on how easily examples come to mind. In other words, mistaking memorable for probable. For example, we tend to overestimate the danger of flying after hearing about plane crashes while underestimating the risk of driving. In reality, flying is statistically much safer than driving. But when planes do crash, they generate massive media attentions with dramatic footage and round-the-clock coverage. Meanwhile, the thousands of daily car accidents are daily events that rarely make national news. Our minds are wired to give more weight to recent information, emotionally charged or personally experienced, not necessarily what is statistically significant. You can overcome availability bias by seeking out actual data and statistics, not just memorable anecdotes. When making decisions, ask yourself, am I judging this based on what is most likely to happen or just what I can most easily remember? Statistics is your best friend when trying to overcome availability bias. 7. Anchoring bias. Anchoring bias is the tendency to rely too heavily on the first piece of information you encounter when making decisions. In other words, letting the initial reference point disproportionately influence your judgment. For example, when negotiating a salary, if the employer opens with $50,000, you are likely to negotiate around the figure, even if the market rate is $70,000. The initial number becomes your mental anchor. In reality, the first piece of information might be completely arbitrary or irrelevant to the actual value, but our brain treats it as a starting point and makes adjustment from there, rarely straying far from the original anchor. This happens everywhere: real estate prices, restaurant menu positioning, product pricing, and even courtroom sentencing. The first number we hear sets the stage for everything that follows. Our minds are wired to use shortcuts, and anchoring provides a quick reference point in uncertain situations, even when the reference point is misleading or manipulative. You can overcome anchoring bias by deliberately seeking multiple reference points before making decisions. When facing any negotiation or valuation, ask yourself, what other benchmarks should I consider? Am I being influenced by irrelevant initial information? Research and preparation are your best defense against anchoring bias. 8. Hindsight bias. Hindsight bias occurs when we believe that past events were more predictable than they actually were, convincing ourselves that we knew it all along, even when we had no way of knowing. Have you ever watched a company stock crash and thought, I saw that coming, even though you never sold your shares or warned anyone beforehand? Or in the case of 2008 market crash, plenty of experts came out afterwards and claimed that saw it coming. I think experts are more prone to hindsight bias than most because their reputation depends on being right. You can break free of this bias by asking yourself this question. What did I actually know before this happened? What am I adding after the fact? Be honest. Keep records of your prediction and decisions in real time before you know the outcomes. Remember that uncertainty was real. You weren't stupid for not knowing something that was genuinely unpredictable. Accept that hindsight creates an illusion of inevitability that didn't exist when you were living through uncertainty. Take comfort in the fact that experts who claim they knew the future are in the same boat as you, living through the unknowns. 9. The Dunning-Kruger effect. Dunning-Kruger effect occurs when people with limited knowledge or skills in a particular area overestimate their own competence, while those with genuine expertise tend to underestimate their abilities relative to others. Have you ever watched someone confidently explain crypto trading after reading a few articles? Or seen a bootcamp graduate insist they could easily build the next Facebook? Meanwhile, actual financial advisors hash their recommendations with caveats, and senior developers are actually acutely aware of how many edge cases and architectural challenges they are still facing daily. I think beginners are especially vulnerable to this bias because they don't yet know what they don't know. The more you learn about something, the more you realize how complex the problem actually is. You can break free of this bias by actively seeking out what you don't understand. Before forming strong opinions, tell yourself this: I know nothing, but I will seek to learn. Ask yourself, what are the gaps in my knowledge? And who actually has deep expertise and experience with this? Embrace the discomfort and uncertainty rather than rushing to confident conclusions. 10. Planning fallacy. Planning fallacy occurs when we systematically underestimate the time, costs, and risks involved in completing future tasks, while overestimating their benefits even when we have access to information about similar past projects. Have you ever told yourself that you finished that home renovation project in 2 weeks, only to still be working on it 3 months later? Or watch a software team confidently promise a product launch in 6 weeks, then delivering 6 months behind schedule? In comparison, experienced project managers build buffer time and contingency plans, knowing that the unexpected complications are the norm, not the exception. I think we're all vulnerable to this bias because we tend to focus on best case scenario and ignore the countless small problems that inevitably arise. We remember our successes much more vividly than our delays and setbacks. You can break free of this bias by actively seeking out what could go wrong. Before making commitments, tell yourself this: everything will take longer than I think, but I will plan accordingly. Ask yourself, what similar projects have I ever done before and how long did they actually take? Embrace the discomfort of padding your estimates rather than promising overly optimistic timelines. If you like this content, check out this video where I walk through the 3 key takeaways from Daniel Amen's book, Change Your Brain, Change Your Life, the breakthrough program for conquering anxiety, depression, obsessiveness, lack of focus, anger, and memory problems. Talk to you next time.